Hello, it's me again. I hope I sound better than the last time you heard me. I acquired a new microphone by stealing it from the back of an Amazon delivery van like it was the armored car heist in Heat. So I hope it was worth the trouble because I can't return it. I recently hit 2,000 subscribers, and to celebrate, I made the mistake of posting a poll to let my viewers decide what type of video I should make next. Then you guys made the mistake of asking to hear my unfiltered dogshit opinions. So now the genie is out of the bottle. You might have noticed the title of this video sounds a bit like clickbait, so let me get straight to the point. The aisle isn't unfair, you're just bad. I am not kidding, there is no punchline. The Isle is an early access, hardcore survival game. Perhaps ironically, the bulk of the criticisms, if you could call them that, I so often see against the game are generally misunderstandings of what early access or hardcore survival entails. While it's tempting for me to tackle both of these misconceptions, I already imagine this video is going to be a bit longer than I want, so we'll just stick with the hardcore survival part of the equation for this one. But to give you the spark notes of what I would theoretically talk about for the early access side of things, I will use an iterative new AI chatbot I just created in my kitchen called Oingo AI. The Isle is an incomplete game undergoing active development with frequent, significant updates. When you purchase an early access game, you are confirming that you understand you do not have the end product and are willing to play the game in its current unfinished state. From developments to glitches, the expectations are laid on the table before you even press the buy button. If playing incomplete games does not appeal to you, you should not buy early access games, dummy. I lied, by the way. That wasn't an AI. That was just me. I'd never use an AI because they are evil and for the weak, which so very coincidentally will later tie into the topic on fairness and difficulty in The Isle. The game is commonly referred to as hardcore survival. The Steam page, from where you purchased it, is full of terminology to reinforce the idea of difficulty. The tagline the game has used for years is literally, "You will not survive the Isle." It is difficult to get more on the nose, short of the store page outright saying, "You're going to die a lot, so you better enjoy it." The Isle is clearly intended to prize difficulty in its gameplay, and some players seem to accept that as a concept. But some players seem to misunderstand the difficulty and think that the game is plainly unfair, sometimes in a vague, general sense, others in specific yet supposedly common circumstances. Fortunately, neither is actually the case. When you spawn into the world in the Isle, you might notice something funny. You see, you start off really small and weak, often quite slow. You're quite vulnerable and easy to kill, and you come into the world hungry to boot. Out the gate, you are at your weakest, and every other player in the game in that moment is your superior. This should set the stage pretty nicely for what you should expect of this game. It is asymmetrical, and you do not always, or perhaps even often, get to hold the power in any given situation. And that's not an accident either, it is the way the game is designed. A lot of players seem to treat the Isle like it's Dinosaur Fortnite, where the time they spend growing isn't really playing the game, but instead just paying the price to get access to the game once they're fully grown. It's a narrow, combat-oriented view that naturally does not jive with what the Isle actually is, a hardcore survival game. Even from a combat perspective, you aren't always going to get into fair fights. In fact, you often will not get into fair fights. You'll take fights when you think you have the advantage. Others will press fights on you when they think they have the advantage. You're going to get jumped. You're going to jump people. Sometimes very literally. Each dinosaur in the game has its own stats and capabilities, further reducing how much fairness you're going to find in combat. A Hypsy isn't going to have a fair fight against an Omni. An Omni isn't going to have a fair fight against a Cerato. Nothing is going to have a fair fight against a Stego. So, you may be wondering then what to do in situations where you find yourself in an unfavorable fight. Well, my dear viewer, you die and learn from your experience. And you should be quite comfortable with dying. It's kinda supposed to be the point of the game. If it bothers you that you lost your precious 87% grown Dilo because you felt entitled to reaching 100% growth, then I have some more bad news for you. You aren't entitled to anything. From growth down to basic resources, the game does not promise you anything, especially if you are a less experienced player, so you will die a lot. Every death should bring you closer and closer to escaping samsara. But in the meantime, you've got to learn from your mistakes. Building up your experience with the game is the best strategy any player could possibly take. To fuck around is human. To find out is divine. The more you play the Isle, the more you will come to realize just how many of your problems could be attributed directly to your own mistakes. Do you happen to have a hard time finding food and regularly starve? The game actually has a crutch for that called AI. See, I mentioned that would come up again. For the skill-deficient carnivore players, there will always be a constant drip feed of AI in just about any server you play. They spawn in fairly regular places, with fairly regular timing, and will fairly regularly make noise to allow easier tracking. Even during patches with AI droughts, there is always some deer or boar or whatever fucking about just outside your field of view if you only knew where to look. That's a skill that will come with time, sure, but the option always remains. And you can't tell me that AI spawns are terrible or inconsistent or whatever excuse, because I am constantly tripping over the fuckers even when I have no need. Hell, in one of my videos, I literally spawn on top of a deer. And don't you worry, herbivore players, you're getting yours too. Grazing is an even bigger crutch than AI ever could be. You can't get any growth boost off of it, sure, but you quite literally can't starve. Even as a fat-ass 6-ton stego that single-handedly demolishes entire migration zones and still wants more, you can't starve. For a game that's supposed to have a high skill floor, it quite auspiciously has several mechanics to artificially lower that skill floor, and people still bitch about food. Let's say you've managed to navigate the jungles of Gateway, find a few meals, and grow your Omniraptor to 100%. You feel better than ever. You've put hours into this raptor, and nothing can stop you now. And then you suddenly die when a giant iguana falls from the heavens and pile drives you back into the character creation screen. Now, that seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? A Herrera that spent half the time you spent on your Omni just ended it all in an instant. The thing is, you made a mistake. You weren't aware of your surroundings. The true number one killer in all of the Isle is situational awareness. There are shockingly few circumstances that are completely out of your hands in the events leading up to your death. From spotting Herreras in the trees to smelling suspicious corpses nearby, there are many ways to find threats before they find you. Again, this is a hardcore survival game. The goal is not to fight everything you see and try to win as many times as you can. It's to survive as long as you can, with the guarantee that you will die eventually, unless you play Stego. A basic understanding of risk assessment will go a long way in aiding your long-term survival. Big ol' pack of Diablo chilling nearby? Probably shouldn't go near them. Pile of corpses underneath a tree? Probably shouldn't go near it. Fish swimming in a body of water that nobody is going anywhere near? Probably shouldn't go near it. A pack of your own species nearby, all covered in mud and not using chat at all? Probably shouldn't go near it. Your survival in the Isle is directly tied to the decisions you make along your journey. A newer player is going to make a lot of bad decisions. They're going to miss context clues. They're going to go in without all the information they need. And they're going to die. A lot. An experienced player is going to make less bad decisions. They're going to do a better job of picking up environmental cues, and they're going to have a deeper understanding of specific details in the game. And they, too, are going to die. At the end of every playthrough, all players are equal. Some may have been mighty fat asses, others may have been small crack rats. Some may have thousands of hours on the game, some may be playing it for their first time. But in the end, they all still die. We all make mistakes eventually. This video was never going to end with me declaring that I'm simply better than all of you because I find the Isle to not be difficult to thrive in. If this isn't my first video that you've watched, then you should know that I make mistakes constantly. And it's no coincidence that I usually die at the end of my videos. The amount of unavoidable circumstances are few and far between, and usually related to early access problems that are often impossible to account for. Sometimes it's simply bad luck that you happen to stumble upon your fate, but ultimately you did still stumble somewhere along the way. Every grow is an experience, and every death a learning experience. Don't just take it at face value as if you're being punished. You're being given a new opportunity, with new challenges to face and new experiences to be had. The growth of your dinosaur may reset, but your growth as a player never stops unless you close your eyes to the learning experiences. The next time you play the Isle and die and think there was nothing you could have done, that the game was truly unfair to you, take a moment or two to retrace your steps in your head and think back about where you might have gone wrong. An open mind on the asset creation screen can go a long way to reducing how often you see it. But do remember, you will still see it. So relax. Enjoy the ups and downs of growing a dinosaur in the vicious, not so unforgiving world of the Isle. The destination is always going to be the same, so it's up to you to make your journey worthwhile. And remember, kids, don't play Stego.